let's head over to Soldier Field and check in with our guy, Patrick Norton. He was at Soldier Field today, doing some different things in the locker room and from the press box. I wanted to get his perspective on what he saw and heard. Before we get into what you heard from the locker room, Patrick, this fumble Rooski play by Ben Johnson, where he gets the whole sidelines to yell fumble. Jared Goff and Gibbs are kind of messing with, acting like they trip. Ball's on the ground now, wide open in the end zone. Sam Laporta. I mean, do you feel like Ben Johnson was kind of letting the Bears know what he's all about in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, he was deep in his bag of tricks for sure today, and they've done that all year, but it felt especially significant today with everybody watching. McCaskey watching, Kevin Warren watching, everybody's watching, and he certainly put on a show, and successfully done too. I mean, I think they punted one time, and that came in the fourth quarter. So
you've got to this situation for Ben Johnson. I'm sure he's the front runner, but he's made some comments before about things that need to be changed within certain organizations. Is this a situation where him or anybody else, coach-wise, comes in and says, listen, if I'm going to coach for the Bears, these are things that I demand to go along with it because of history? Like, there's got to be more than just, hey, I just want to sign up and be a Bears coach.
Now, I think that's possible. However, it should also be said he's never been a head coach, and there are only 32 of these jobs out there. You can't come in to a place where you don't have a background. Ben Johnson doesn't have a background in Chicago, so he can't really be making these wild or put together this list of demands when he really hasn't proven himself to Chicago. Sure, if Dan Campbell were to move on for some reason and Detroit was, getting Ben Johnson instead and promoting him to head coach, then sure. But that's not what's happening. He's going to a different organization. So I never really bought into the comments that, well, he might not be interested in the Bears. If that's the case, that's just an odd thing to do because, again, 32 of these jobs, they don't roll around that often.
Right.
Sure, 7 open up every year. But in the grand scheme of things, it is a rare opportunity.
Yeah,
at least that's what I've learned.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that the demand is high for Ben Johnson right now. And what I do love about Ben Johnson is what I see from Detroit's offense. What I see from Detroit's offense, I really enjoy. It's got Chicago run game written all over it. It's got Chicago written all over.
Sure.
It. I love that about it.
How many times did they do an end around to a wide receiver today?
Not much.
No.
Right.
And when you look at too, it's just like how many of the explosive plays. I mean, it feels like they get 20 yards without breaking a sweat. And like it just feels like they string together explosive play after explosive play, but they feel like layups at the same time. So there's a lot of creative play design within that. And so it's Ben Johnson's certainly impressive. You were going to add on to that, Lance?
Well, yes, but remember this: they have one of the top offensive lines in the NFL, if not the top offensive line in the NFL.
That's exactly right.
Like there's some things that we have to realize with this team, and if Ben Johnson takes over for the Bears, it's not going to look like it does in Detroit because we don't have that offensive line.
Yes, it's going to be an improvement to the play calling, but he can't bring Detroit's offensive line. Yep,
absolutely.
Exactly right.
And it's going to take time to put together those pieces so that you get an offense that looks similar to the one that's putting up or producing as much as Detroit is right now.
Yep. And there's going to be an emphasis on the trenches here this offseason and on that offensive line, but then you need that offensive line to come together as a unit, which also will take time. And I know patience is kind of run out here in Chicago. And I know we're going to be looking for instant results as soon as next year starts. So that's just the nature of the beast here in the NFL and here in Chicago, where the Bears fans have kind of had enough. And to your point, Lance, when you talk about the ultimatum, so to speak, of what Ben Johnson put out there about organizations learning from their mistakes, I think something, I think some Bears fans need to keep in mind from that little tidbit that Albert Breer put out, about a month ago, is Dan Quinn was once interviewed to be a head coach for the Chicago Bears, and he was flown out in coach, reported by David Kaplan. And guess who Dan Quinn's agent? Guess who his agent also is the agent of? Ben Johnson. So, these guys talk. These people talk, and I think,
the Bears flew him out on coach. What did they fly him on? Southwest?
Yeah. Yeah.
I bet you they flew him on Frontier, and he had to pay for his own bags.
That's right. So something to keep in mind. Let's get into some of the things that you learned from the locker room, Patrick. I know you said you had I know you had a chance to talk with Keenan Allen. He certainly had a big day. He talked about putting things on tape. So I'm not sure if he's thinking about trying to get a new contract in Chicago or beyond, but what are some of the things you learned from Keenan from his day with Caleb Williams?
So here's what's interesting about Keenan Allen right now. He, is essentially a free agent in 2 weeks. It's the end of a 4-year contract that he's on right now. But beyond that, he is 2 touchdowns away from setting his career high. Is 7 on the season right now. His high was, I believe, 20, whatever the year was, but he had 8 1 year. And he's had 7 a couple of times, a lot of 6s in there. 4 weeks ago, when he was on Mercedes Lewis's podcast, he had said it's Chicago or I'm back to LA, saying in the offseason, I would either like to stay in Chicago or I'm going back to the Chargers where I was. Today, that comment was, you got to prove it to all 32 teams. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. The last name on your back is really what matters. That's kind of a tone shift from 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, to where it now seems like, hey, this is, it's no longer Chicago or back to LA. And he's right. I mean, who knows what the interest would be from Chicago or from Los Angeles. You do have to play for more teams, but it was just interesting hearing him say after the game today that it's about what he's putting on tape and really using these next couple of weeks and already these past few weeks as just an audition for his next home.
Peter, I wish you'd have been saying that from day one. Day one, because every snap that you get in the NFL really and truly is. You never know what's going to happen, and so and for him, it's because he's such a veteran. He's such a seasoned vet, and you've seen him year after year produce for the Chargers, regardless if he's injured or not. It was really disappointing watching him drop so many catchable footballs this year. Yep. I think we all know he's better than that.
He is. He had what last week 4, and I thought that it was interesting because the gloves came back, but he had trouble with the ball early on in the game. And I think his first reception of it, you may have noticed he wasn't wearing his gloves. And so I thought, all right, maybe he's blaming the gloves. Maybe that's what he's gonna pin this on right now. But then when he caught the touchdown on the sideline, he's wearing the gloves again. So clearly wasn't that important to him.
Too cold.
But yeah, he's a guy who is getting a lot of money right now. And I just feel like in the NFL and in most sports anywhere, you don't stay with, if you're going to take a pay cut at some point, you're probably going somewhere else to do it. You're not taking a pay cut and staying with the same team. Keenan Allen's going to command a lot less money than the $20 million that he's making now, the 20 plus that he's making now. It's going to be a little bit different. So I don't think that that's going to be in Chicago at this rate. And so that's kind of why the comments were pretty interesting to me.
And no drops on the day for the Chicago Bears, at least I believe. And so that's something where they clean that up, because there certainly has been a fair share of drops throughout this year, and including with Keenan Allen. So, a cleaner day, although there was a moment in today's game where Keenan Allen was lined up offsides, because at one point they said offsides on the offense. And I was like, surely that's a mistake. And it wasn't. Only the Bears can find ways to.
Only the Bears have a receiver that's going to know them, and the Kansas City Chiefs in Kadarius Toney, that'll have a receiver line up off sides and not check with the referee and make sure that you are on side.
Yep.
Crazy.
And so when you talk about putting things on tape, I think that also goes into it. But just one thing after another with this year's Chicago Bears. Let's keep going around the horn here with some of the different things you learned from the locker room with our guy, Patrick Norton. Cole Kmet, I saw the clip earlier. He doesn't look too thrilled. I think he's over it, and certainly a lot of shots across the bow from a lot of fans here in the city that have also kind of worn thin with patience. So what are some of the things you heard from the 85?
So I shot the video that we posted. And then when Thomas Brown was announced, or when it was announced that Thomas Brown was going to the podium, I stopped recording and I started to head out. It's a shame that I didn't get Cole for about 15 more seconds, because it was probably the most intriguing thing that he said, or not intriguing, but just damning thing that he said was when he was asked about there being so many Lions fans in the stands. And it really was. I know, Braggs, you were here for a little bit of the game, so it seemed 50-50 almost. And Cole said he was like, it wasn't surprising, or it's not surprising. And then he went on to say, Detroit's having a great year and we're not. Of course they're going to travel well. It's a relatively close game for them. And based on the trend and direction of these two teams, it was an opportunity and almost a guarantee to watch them win the game. So just kind of speaks to the direction of things around here. I've never seen a Bears game where it has been so drastically, where Soldier Field has just been so drastically overtaken by opposing fans.
Yeah, I was doing everything I could to give them crap throughout. And when the Bears scored 2 touchdowns in the first half, I was trying my best to make fun of the Lions fans. I was like, we haven't scored a touchdown in the first half all year, you losers.
Yep.
Now you gave up 2. How are you going to win a Super Bowl when you're letting us score? But that's about all I had on them. For the most part, they were getting the last laugh. And honestly, when you talk about the Lions fans there, the other thing that really stood out for me was all the mistake after mistake after mistake, stupid mistake after stupid mistake. Lions fans just looking at each other like, this is crazy. Like, you could see it. Like, they were like, they couldn't believe it. Like, and that's a sad state to be for Chicago Bears fans.
For the Bears, or let's look at the Lions first. This game started field goal, touchdown, field goal, touchdown. For the Bears, I think it went punt, fumble, punt. That decided the game right there. You were in a 20-point hole right off the bat.
Right.
And that's insurmountable to this team, especially right now.
But that's what the Bears do.
Right.
But that's what the Bears have done. They've shown that this is who we are, and this is what we like to dig ourselves into a hole in the beginning of games, and then we like to stay there.
Well, and then look at how they ended the game. You have DJ Moore fumble on, a little jet sweep thing that they're doing, and then they have a false start with Jake Curran, and then there's a delay of game right after a penalty, I believe. Like, it's just it's one thing after another, and the entire go ahead.
And Braggs, what about the business decisions that are made on the defense? Let's talk about these business decisions. I've been really wanting to get into this too. And near the goal line, I'm telling you, the little shoulder push that Jalen Johnson gave, to get him running back into the end zone, it was to help him into the end zone. is
Lance,
really indicative of where we're at right now.
I love that you brought this up because it's something that I had written down too here. There was a play, I think it was a Jameson Williams catch, and he's on the sideline and he's wrapped up. And I don't remember who has him wrapped up, but he's still moving forward. He needs another good hit. And he's in a vulnerable spot too, where a good hit is, going to do some damage.
Yes.
As crappy as that sounds to say, but that's the goal of the game right there.
Absolutely.
And what he does is he essentially just kind of hugs him out of bounds, just hugs him and guides him out. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Hit somebody from time to time. That was a frustrating moment. You could tell that people were frustrated in the stands for it too. Just kind of a collective groan from the Bears fans that were there. And that just kind of sums up what you've seen from this defense. And I don't even know if I'd say all year, because there have been points during this season where they've been the hard hitters. They've been playing well.
Yeah.
And it's not everybody on that unit either. But Jalen Johnson, you mentioned him at the goal line. I'm talking about him on the sideline. It's not uncommon with him this year. And it's a bit disappointing.
I agree. And there's so many things that kind of piled on. I see Kyler Murray come in and he takes a poor angle to Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs puts a spin move on him. He puts a spin move on him and he flies right by. Okay. These are just things, man, that doesn't, all the things together don't just happen to teams. They happen to us. And all of them happen in one game, and it's one play after another. So you see Kyler on this play, you see Jalen on this play, and you see a missed sack by one of our defensive tackles or defensive ends, and it just piles up, and you get worn down by it.
So here's another reason why I'm kind of frustrated by it too, and that's because Thomas Brown, when he took over 3 weeks ago, it was, I'm going to preach aggression. We're going to be aggressive. That's what we do. And instead, the team has lost their aggressive step. They certainly haven't taken a step towards it. And that is seen not only in the way that they're hitting, but in the way that they're making decisions. And one of those decisions was a big one today, and that was the 4th and 7 when the Bears were down by 20 at their own, at Detroit's 12-yard line. And, you see Caleb come off and he said the diplomatic thing after the game, saying, I wasn't frustrated by the decision. I was more frustrated that we were in that situation in the first place. Okay, that's true. I get that. He was also upset with the decision. I mean, let's call what it is. And that's fine. Good. You like that fire from your quarterback. But you can't say that you're going to be the aggressive head coach, and then when you're down by 20, more than halfway through the third quarter, not go for it on 4th and 7 from the 12-yard line. It especially looks worse when, and I have it written down, it was with about like 10 minutes left in the game. They're faced with a 4th and 7. They're on their own 31 and they go for it, and they're down by 17. And it's a 10-yard catch to Keenan. It's a good route, good ball. Everything works smoothly on that play. They pick it up. And it goes, and then the way that drive ends is with Caleb taking that sack with about 9 minutes left in the game. Yeah. It's 3rd and 11 then. It's now 4th and 20. And you're at the Detroit 37-yard line. Would have been a 55-yarder on 4th down for Cairo. It would bring it to a 2-possession game. And instead, Thomas Brown confirms after the game it's not within his range. So the sack had taken him out of Cairo's range. 55 yards. We're talking about a 55-yard field goal. I'm not a kicker. I can't complain about it too much. It was a little windy out there. I get it. But you also saw Jake Bates, the Detroit kicker, miss a 60-yarder. What was the 65 yarder?
Yeah.
He pushed it right. It's not that it didn't have the distance. He pushed it right.
Yeah.
That's all. And
I'll say this.
And then, yeah.
No, go ahead, Patrick. Go ahead, Patrick.
Well, the last thing on that field goal was instead of taking the field goal, they then intentionally take a delay of game.
Yeah.
While the game clock is running, 40 seconds off the clock, and then they punt. They're down 34-17 with 9 minutes left in the game, You drain 40 of those seconds off, and then you punt. That
That's a
is
good
not
point.
aggression. I
That's a good
don't know. And you can't
Yeah.
lie and say that you're the aggressive head coach and then do that. That's just
Yeah.
not, yeah.
The
It's
other,
not winning
I think
football.
the other thing, not at all, I agree with you. But the other thing, you can't, listen, you couldn't drop me into a jungle and say tame it.
Oh,
This is
absolutely.
right now. This is a jungle right now. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I don't think anybody can tame it right now. The best thing that we can do moving forward, is not only have that for the offensive side, somebody that these players can believe in, but you're also going to need somebody on that defensive side that these players can believe in.
Yep.
And again, I go back and forth on the analytical guy versus the old school guy, having a healthy balance of it all. But you really need to have a guy that both sides are going to buy into. They have to buy into. There's too much talk of players coming in and experiencing having bad experience with the organization of the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, well said. And Minnesota played Seattle, and the Bears get ready to take on the Seahawks at Soldier Field here in just 4 days. The day after Christmas, Seattle's going to have to fly across the country, and Geno Smith throws an interception in their attempt to try to either tie the game or take the lead. So the Vikings win as the fight for the number 1 seed continues to stay interesting, and Seattle comes here after a tough loss, and I know they're fighting to try to stay in playoff contention as well. So that's going to be a big game for the Seahawks and an opportunity for the Bears to avoid a 10-game losing streak. Patrick, really good stuff from everything you learned from Soldier Field. Why don't you give the viewers a little clue in on what you're working on here for later tonight and what they can expect from ALLCHGO.com?
Going a little bit more in depth on the aggression, a little bit more in depth on Keenan Allen's comments as well. That'll be posted later tonight. And then we'll also have Carm's grades up there in a little bit too.
Yeah,
good stuff.
Sounds good. Well, appreciate you jumping on with us.
Thanks.
Here tonight. Great work as always at Soldier
Merry
Field.
Christmas, guys.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you as well. Patrick Norton, everyone. Shout out to him.
We all silly like the mayor.